Hello everybody, I'm back with another video. A lot of you may be wondering about the lore and timeline of Railway Tales, as it started around the time of BR's electricization, but also has a few past episodes, and future ones will be coming out. But the question still remains, these past episodes, there are some stories that won't be made episodes. So, to celebrate the 77th anniversary of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, I decided to show the world how Thomas Friends inspired me to make this show. So, without wasting any more time, let's get started. This will be a long one. It was the 19,000, and and the first engine rolled out of Charman's works. Charman was named after the works manager, and Carl was made. Carl was an experimental saddle tank engine. Carl started to become on trial, and they tested him with cars. After his test, he was soon sent to work. Although there were a few steaming issues, so they decided to make another engine. His name was Carol. Carl didn't really like her, as he thought that she might replace her. But Carl informed him that she was not meant to replace him, just to improve. The class was so successful, they decided to make 3 other engines of them. Karen, Taran, and Charan. But sadly, 2 of them since scrapped. Taran has remained. Taran was would become the number 1 of the railway. We skip ahead to 1915. During some problems, and after the problems ended, after the war, which hasn't been too much of an effect, as having a safety act, as the Engine Safety Act somehow worked. A narrow gauge railway would be constructed, and during the year 1915, oh dear, I seem so. Carlong was built to become a standard gauge diesel sold, as the Tubbs Pat was making experimental engines, which just ran on a bit of fuel that cars did. This experiment was a success, but he couldn't really make many of them, as the resources were a lot, so he could only make 4 of them. 2 of them being Joey and Carlong. Carlong was finished first and shipped over. The narrow gauge diesel was not an idea, but he was accidentally built too small with the wrong blueprints. Carlong would be the cabless design, and he boasted all the engines. As soon as he came to the railway, he would have some trouble. He would not want to pull some slate cars up the hill, so he decided to just not pull them. They eventually got him working, but he backed down and the cars went flying. He had a Joy out of it that was left on the siding. Joey was also finished and shipped over to help him out. After some events and Joey having some fueling issues, diesels were new tech at the time. Were a bit of a new tech, and every single British railway was not interested in these new types. But so Joey had a fueling issue. Eventually, Carlon got him rolling again, and he was back working. He would also have some coach lag problems. I bumped the coaches a bit too hard, showing that nobody won't act. But acting can also get you in trouble by doing it the wrong way. Anyways, we skip ahead to 1921. We should know the Big Four was an act, and the Southern and the maintenance and the little tourist attraction railway was soon a part of the Southern Railway. Some engines were transferred onto the railway. A few King Arthurs, and some American shunters. With all the new engines, Carlon and Carroll were used less and less, along with their 3 other brothers and 2 other brothers and 1 sister. It was a shame. But after one of the King Arthurs breaking down with their express, Carl soon got working, was let out, and pulled the train over to the station. Meanwhile, over in America, a man called William Stanley was winning in the fast lane until he came across a railway. Until he needed to get home somehow, as he got there to the races by taxi, as his car was at the works. He soon came upon a diesel. He was very fascinated by it, and while riding home, he knew after he wanted a railway just like it. He would soon move to Britain to work for a business company to get enough money to buy some engines. We skip ahead to 1925. Another narrow gauge railway, factory narrow gauge railway, wanted to was competitive with the car-long railway. So they decided to build their own railway, a Southern Narrow Gauge Railway, or the SNR for short. They had its engine captain, who would run the line for many years by himself. The line did not require another engine, as it was small, and he didn't really need any help. So all he needed to do was shunt cars and get everything, and using some of his steam to get some of the machinery. And just shunting cars and making deliveries. Meanwhile, on the newsstand, we skip ahead over to 1930s and 40s. After the second one, around the time, there would soon be a British BR soon came into play. And the Southern Railway would become one of the regions, and their southern part would become one of the regions. And many engines soon came to the railway. But sadly, they did not have any use for the saddle tanks, so they took 3 of the saddle tanks to the scrapyard. Over in the Paddington line, they needed a new shunt there. So Carl So Carl was sent over there. He was sad to leave his home with bigger and newer engines, and having to be refrained to just shunting work. It felt his life was falling apart into misery. While working there, he met a lot of engines, some nice engines like Scotsman, and some not nice engines like Mallard. Meanwhile, in the 1960s, dieselization was coming into play, and less work was for Carl. They considered getting in a Class 08 to take his job, but as the times were rough, they couldn't afford an engine to take Carl's place until they did. A Class 08 shunter called 26709 went to Paddington to shunt trains. Carl was miserable. He was shunted onto a siding by the engine. The engine was a very rude engine. It didn't know anything. Why? So Carl was just laying to dust, and would only be used in emergencies if needed. As he watched all the other diesels go by, he just felt sad. Over in Australia, an experimental engine called was built to be a box engine, like the Southern Railway's box engine, streamlined box engines, except it was meant for goods work instead of passenger work. And the result was an Australian SP Class 26. The class was unsuccessful and it didn't really perform well. So it was going to be a privately government-owned engine. This engine is not real in any form. Is not a real engine at all. Meanwhile, an engine called Spam Cam would be in 1960. Meanwhile, an engine called Door would go over to the island of Sodor. He would soon get a bowler hat stuck in his intake and step in, and Montague would take the train. Shame it was. In 1968, Spam Cam soon was on trial to see if this engine, along with Bear Cam. Spam Cam didn't help with the train and was soon sent away. Anyhow, in the 1970s, a poor time came. Electricization came into act, and the engines were not too pleased about electricization. Diesels were being scrapped. It was a shame. Meanwhile, many engines came and went on the railway, on the Southern Narrow Gauge Railway. But it soon had to be taken down. Two of their engines, called Lenny and Luggy, were soon sent away to a railway, to the Carlong Railway, to see if they could get some money. But that was no help. Sad times were coming, and it wouldn't feel any better. As soon, Lawrence Spam were soon on goods work, while the electric engines did their work. They soon came across two small diesel engines, who were just too young to be scrapped. So the two diesels so Spam Cam decided to save them. But they also got withdrawn from service. Meanwhile, though, the runner from America would soon get enough money to buy as many engines as he needed. So, he decided to go see if there were any diesels available, as they were his favorite type of engine. But there weren't many options available. He soon landed to the Southern Railway, which was getting written off, as it wasn't getting many customers, just for tourism as it is. He soon decides to buy the line and have a maintenance engine, which would only be used in emergencies, but soon would have to be taken out more often to do more help with extra work. Meanwhile, four intercities were unveiled. Pip and Emma, or Pippi and Emma, or Pip and Emma for short. Pip and Emma were four diesels, which were accidentally given the same name. The four engines argued about who should keep their names until they decided they should both keep their names. And Pip and Emma were soon on fast express work. Until they were bought in 1985. But that's many years later. 1977. Meanwhile, the engines didn't know, but they were purchased and were being chased by diesels to be given. They soon went through some bumps, but soon eventually made it to their heritage railway. They did not know what the railway was called until they were given the name, the Mid-Southern Heritage Railway. Meanwhile, an experimental engine called Sucker was rolled out of the works to suck on any coaches instead of wasting time coupling up the coaches. This engine was only made for shunting. And the performance was successful. Meanwhile, on the narrow gauge railway, Lenny and Luggy soon found their way on the narrow gauge on the Carlon Railway. And they would have their own adventures with Spam Cam and Bowler. Meanwhile, the Southern Narrow Gauge Railway would soon be closed, and all the other engines were sold. Two of the engines, Kelly and Carl's, were purchased by the Carlon Railway to help out, and Kelly was soon put on emergency rescue trains after braving an emergency. Let's see. A captain would soon be coming to the railway, but Luggy and Lenny mistaken it for their engine captain. captain, but it would take a year until the captain would arrive. Meanwhile, 2 diesels were soon trialed on the railway. They would soon become troublesome and were sent away. Soon after, Pip and Emma joined the group. Would join the group instead. Soon, Sucker was soon sold to the. After pulling a few strings, William soon bought Sucker to be a part of his railway, as too much work was put on Jack and Tommy, as they had a little goods train they both take from the east and the west. And it tired them much just to shunt everybody's trains at their free time when they could be resting. Meanwhile, on the narrow gauge railway, their chief mechanic, Alan Boxing, would soon get an engine named after him. The engine would be built in France and soon named after him, and would join the fleet after having an adventure with electric engines. Bohr was getting a bit upset with electric engines, as some other electric engines soon would join the railway. Tracy soon joins the railway to help on a new branch line, along with 2 other electric engines. Called Telly and Nellie. But soon were assured that the diesels and steam engines would not get replaced. Along with the diesel hauled captain to run their docks. With the word of Lenny hearing that the captains were scrapped, Lenny did not know that the dockside diesel, which I forgot the name of, was just restoring to her class, the captain. Meanwhile, they were telling a story about Meanwhile, Carl Long was telling a story about coach slags. Until they realized what the mistake they made afterwards. They told a story about what happened on their railway to their old number 2, they call him. Soon after, William Stanley and the other railway controllers soon find this engine. While taking a hike in the woods, William Stanley was trying to find a spot to build a base to find the engine, until he finds him under the ground. The captain was soon rescued and sent over to the Carlong Railway. Afterwards, all the engines have a wonderful reunion. Meanwhile, a storm hits, and Spamkin was taking a train, but he couldn't take it alone as he needed a back engine. Not many engines were available except for Jack, so he tries to push, but it wasn't enough. They needed more help, but there was no help available, so they had to work together to get the train home. The two engines soon saw different sides for each other. Spam Cam not being a grumpy engine, and Jack not a cheeky little engine. Spam Cam would also go to the island of Sodor again after many, many years. And as for the future, it is unknown what happens. I'd like to tell everybody that this is what I inspired. I know I'm not the first to make a different tale similar to Thomas' friends. In fact, I might be the last. But Thomas inspired me, and I hope will inspire you to make your own stories with these beautiful little engines. Edward, once upon a time, and anyways, happy 77th anniversary to Thomas the Tank Engine and friends, and goodbye. Oh, and a little outro, and see you later. Once upon a time, there was a little engine called Edward. He lived in a shed with 5 other engines. They were all bigger than Edward and boasted about it. The driver won't choose you, they said. Thanks, Reverend Wilbur Audrey. Thanks for bringing Thomas. Anyways, goodbye. So this part of the video is where I talk about the miniature rail, as I forgot to mention them in the first part. So, anyways, let's get started. The miniature railway was opened in 1968, as standard gauge or narrow gauge engines cannot fit through a mine that had perfect bricks buildability. So the miniature engine called Gerald was built to run the line. Nothing extensive happened to the line, and that's pretty much it. And that's what nothing extensive happened to the line, besides a few rain floods, but that's pretty much it. Nothing else happens. It would get a spare engine in 1999, named Carol. But that's several years before. This series takes place in 1985. Anyways, it's pretty much the lessons, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, Reverend Wilbur Audrey, for bringing Thomas the Tank Engine. Without him, he inspired me. He wouldn't have inspired me to make stories like this ever. And I decided to redo it. And since I'm on my desk, I decided to redo it. Now, I just did that for the first part of the video, but anyways, let's do it. Once upon a time, there lived a little one called Edward. He lived in a shed with 5 other engines. They were all bigger than Edward, boasted about it. The driver won't choose you, they said. Edward has not been out for a long time. Goodbye. Happy 77th anniversary, Thomas the Tank Engine.